Missing this can lead to losing your work. What am I talking about? The most fun subject ever to talk about, which is file management and organization within Ableton. And as boring and tedious as this stuff can be, it is so important so that you do not lose your work, miss files, miss samples, or otherwise lose a potential masterpiece that you are working on. So in this video, we're going to dive deep into how to organize yourself within Ableton, how to manage your sessions, as well as a few tips as to how to back up your files and make the most out of your CPU system. So let's dive in. Hey yo, it's Alex from Metamind Music, and with this channel, it's my mission to help musicians produce themselves by expanding their mindset, developing their creativity, and connecting to their inner artist in a deeper way. All right, before we dive into the Ableton settings and setting up your hard drives and your user library and your packs and your audio and all that fun stuff, let's talk about managing your files. And let's start with Ableton's file structure, which is projects, sets, and clips. And when I started out with Ableton, I was totally oblivious to how this worked. And it's a little bit counterintuitive, so let's run through it. All right, so let's zero in on the idea of projects, sets, and clips. All right, so to start off, I have this template that I've been using, but let's go ahead and go to File and Save Live Set As. And you'll notice that when you hit this, Ableton automatically has the name of your session and saves it to whatever project you're working within. Okay, so I have a project for this template. However, for the sake of this video, let's go ahead and just go to the desktop, and we're going to save this as something different. Let's go with Ableton File Management. Such an attractive title for a track. And now, since we went to the desktop, or this could be anywhere, your documents, this could be a hard drive. Now that you've saved it and there's no project that it is connected to, it's going to create a new project. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. And now you'll notice that we're in Ableton File Management, the track, in Ableton File Management, the project. So since we did that, Ableton just automatically created a new project with the Ableton File Management set inside that project. Okay, so if we actually go ahead and go Save Live Set As again, you'll notice that we can change the name of our set and save it inside the same project. Okay, so let's say I made some variations to the set, but it's the same song. I could go ahead and hit 2 and it will save it to the same project, right? So now we're working in Ableton File Management 2 inside the Ableton File Management project. And this might seem a little bit confusing at first because it is counterintuitive. And the way that I kind of look at it is projects are containers for sets, and sets would be any sort of variation that you have for one track idea, for one song idea. So whether you're jamming out new improvisations on top of similar motifs or similar parts, if you're doing a remix, if you have multiple mix takes of mixes that you have for a song, they could all live within the same project. However, all right, so I've created a new live set, which is just the default live set that comes up. And if we go ahead and let's say we created some parts and this is a whole new song, okay? This is totally unrelated to our Ableton File Management song project. Now, if we go to File, Save Live Set As, you'll notice that Ableton automatically points this file to be saved inside that same project folder, which is a problem, okay? I don't know why Ableton has decided to do this, but this is a major problem, because if I were to save this new song idea into this project folder, now I have 2 unrelated tracks that are saved underneath one project directory folder. And that can lead to some massive problems because the Ableton project folder is what hosts all of the samples. So if you were to record audio into this new song, and then save this new song into the wrong project folder, and then you realize later that you're like, oh, this track has nothing to do with all of these other variations of this other track in this project folder, and you drag that session out of the project folder to organize it in some other place, all of the samples will go missing because they are linked inside the project folder. All right, So that is something to keep in mind. So what I would suggest is whenever you're working on a new track that is definitely unrelated to other tracks, always go save live set as. It will pop up this, and make sure that you do not save it to a project folder that has nothing to do with this track. So basically you're making project folders for every single different track, different song idea that you're working on. And this will just save you so many headaches down the road of having missing samples, missing files, anything of that nature. So every new song idea gets its own folder. So meaning if I click on the desktop or anywhere else that you want to save your song to, just go ahead and do that, save. And now let's actually go to the desktop and look at that. So if we go to our desktop, we have our new project, new song idea project, and then the new song idea set inside of that. And that is how I suggest you organize your projects in Ableton, because if I would have saved this live set inside of this project folder, right, there's only one folder that houses all of the samples and data. So you're better off to keep different project folders for different tracks. All right, you might be asking yourself, like, what's the point of a live set then if you're creating new projects per track? Well, let's say you're working on a song and you have a structure, you have an arrangement, but you kind of feel like experimenting with it, right? You kind of feel like breaking it apart, trying new things, maybe playing around with the arrangement. And if you're scared of breaking it, if you're scared of messing up something you already have, what you could do is go File and then New Live Set, right? And then you could work on this live set as a different variation of the same idea. To recap it all, clips are loops of musical ideas that are audio or MIDI, and they store all the effects and automation within the clip, which is super powerful. All right, and you can find any, if I go here and I find a project, right, you can see all of the different tracks and all of the different clips within those tracks inside of the project folder from your browser, which is super, super powerful, because you can actually take clips from other songs and move it to the project you're working on, and it will automatically have all the effects and all of the automation baked in and just warp it to the tempo you're working on. Super great for saving ideas that might not have a home yet. All right, and beyond that, on top of clips, we have sets. And I would recommend that sets are basically different variations, different ideas of the same track. Okay, so if you have a track that you have one arrangement and then you want to mess around with a different arrangement, if you have a mix and you want to try a different take of a mix without overriding your first mix that you've done, then I would use different live sets within the same project folder. And then finally, project folders are the thing that contains every idea that's related to one song, all right, to one track. The next tip for managing your files is that every time you save your project, I highly suggest that instead of hitting save live set, you hit collect all and save. And the difference between this is if I hit this, you can actually save the files that you import from elsewhere. So let's say you take a sample from Splice or something. It will save all of the stuff from the user library. It will save all of the factory pack presets, whatever it is. All to say is that it saves everything that's related to the song, everything, all the audio, everything, all the samples into the project folder. Okay, and I suggest that you always do this because it just a safety measure that the project contains everything that is needed for that project. Okay, if you don't hit collect all and save and something gets moved in your file directory, you can have missing files, right? And it can be a real headache to try and find those. I have dealt with that a lot. So I just suggest that you just do collect all and save all the time, and this will just save you the headache of having to worry about finding missing samples, missing audio if something gets moved. And yes, it does take a little bit more memory on your hard drive, but frankly, external hard drives are very inexpensive these days. Memory is cheap, so just go ahead and do it to save you the headache. All right, another quick tip is you can hop in your preferences, go to library and collect files on export. Put that to always, all right, just to cover your bases so that everything that's related to your project gets collected and saved into the project. All right, and the final tip of managing your files before we get into the hard drive stuff is that I suggest that you keep your track naming consistent. So over time, as you develop approaches, methods, ways that you like to do things. Maybe you build a template, maybe you use similar instruments session after session. You're going to start to realize that naming things in a similar fashion will have a huge advantage for if you need to go into other projects to find ideas, and it will just save you so much time to find what you're looking for. So for example, for me, what I teach and what I use is that I name my tracks in terms of rhythm, bass, melody, and dynamics. Otherwise, I also name the audio tracks what it is. So guitar, bass, vocals, and I try to keep that consistent, right? And this is a huge advantage that if ever I have to go back into any previous project because I want to find an idea, I think that it might work with what I'm working on now, that all of the tracks are easy to find because I name them in a consistent way. So I highly suggest that you consider that to help you find those ideas a lot quicker. All right, now let's move on to talking about how to make the most of your hard drives with Ableton. And the whole idea behind this is to avoid traffic jams from reading and writing data. So that basically boosts up your CPU instead of your CPU having to focus on doing multiple tasks at the same time. There are different areas, different hard drives that can read and write data at the same time, which can actually help you with your CPU usage if you find that you're hitting the top with your CPU often. All right, so drive number one is your system drive, which is the hard drive on your computer. And ideally, this would be a solid state drive just because they are faster at reading and writing data. If not, it's not a big deal. Use what you have. And I would use this hard drive. So this is the native hard drive on your computer to both host Ableton, so you install your DAW to your main hard drive, as well as any third-party plugins. Okay, so if you download some plugins from the net, if you buy some from Waves, from FabFilter, from anywhere, you can install them directly onto your hard drive. So then your main system drive is only being used for hosting your DAW and hosting third-party plugins. All right, and the second drive I suggest is an audio hard drive. So this can be used for your samples and your libraries, your sound libraries. And this can really help boost your CPU by taking the load off your main computer's hard drive and putting it on an external drive for finding samples and finding sound libraries, and keeping it separate from the hard drive that is hosting your DAW and your plugins. All right, so I have a hard drive called Audio Solid State Drive where I keep all of my audio samples and sound libraries, and I keep it separate from my main drive. And the way to set this up inside of Ableton is you're going to want to open up your preferences. So you're going to want to go and change the location of your user library, as well as the installation folder for your packs, which are the sound libraries that you can download directly from Ableton, and make sure that they're living on an external hard drive. And you'll see that my folder for packs is my external hard drive, my audio solid state drive. However, I've kept my user library on my main computer hard drive just because I have a really powerful computer, so I don't really have to stretch for more CPU usage. However, if you're using a laptop without much RAM and you don't have the best processor, maybe consider moving your user library to an external drive. So then all the audio that you record, whether it's vocal, guitar, any kind of instrument, any kind of audio you record, will be stored on an external drive instead of your main hard drive, and just help avoid traffic jams as you're working. All right, the third drive I suggest is a project drive. So this is a hard drive to keep all of your different Ableton projects on, so that first of all, it's safe from your main computer hard drive. If ever your computer fails, all of your projects are saved onto an external drive. And if you follow the tip of collecting all and save, every time you save a project, all of the information, the samples, and everything that you need for that project is going to be saved into those files. And then if ever your computer crashes or something, at least your external hard drive has all of the information for all of your projects to then restore to another computer if ever that would happen. All right, so my project drive is where I keep all of my Ableton projects, and I've saved them into various amounts of folders to keep myself organized. But the key behind this is that every project on this external hard drive has everything that is needed for that project to be recreated on any computer. All right, so I've collected all and saved all of these projects, and all of these projects are for individual tracks. All right, if you want to go the extra mile inside of Ableton, you can go to your preferences, go to file folder, and you can actually change the location of your temporary folder as well as your catch folder to that same project external hard drive. This will help your CPU a tiny bit. It's not super important because this cache folder gets cleared out every time you exit out a project, but a temporary folder is just copies of any audio that you record gets saved to that folder, which you could, in theory, put to that external drive to help lighten the load a little bit more on your main computer. All right, and finally, I would suggest a fourth hard drive to be your backup hard drive. All right, so I have a backup hard drive that has backed up everything from my main computer as well as my external hard drives to that bigger backup hard drive. And I do that just as an extra layer of safety. If ever a hard drive fails or something, at least you're not left for dead. You could also use a cloud service like Google Drive or Dropbox and just get an upgraded plan with a lot of memory. And then you could actually save all of your Ableton projects, collect all and save, put them to the cloud, and then you don't have to worry about ever losing your work. And you can access that from any computer that can access your Google Drive or your Dropbox account. So theoretically, what you could do is like save all your stuff onto the cloud, and then you could have a laptop and you could open up your projects from the cloud onto your laptop while you're out and about with all of the information baked in, which is a fun little tip if you like to produce on the go. And hey, if you're just getting started with music production and feeling completely overwhelmed by the process, or if you're having trouble finishing tracks, or if you just want to get a glimpse inside my personal workflow, I've created a super easy to follow 7-step framework that helps you go from your very first ideas to picking the best ones, arranging a track, editing it, mixing and mastering it, so you can finish more music and get better and better while you go through the cycle and finish the process. And it's super handy to have around the studio as a printout to follow along. So if you're interested in grabbing that, you can find it in the description below. And that wraps it up for this video. I just wanted to do a rapid fire kind of organization, file management video on Ableton. I know it's kind of boring, it's kind of tedious, it's not the most fun thing to think about, but I encourage you to go through these steps and make sure that you are organized and you back up your work regularly, because I would hate it for you to lose your precious work. There's no worse feeling in the world. I've lost some work in my day, and it's just something I really want you to avoid. And you can avoid that just by following the steps we did in this video. So let me know, have you backed up your work recently? Do you have a different organizational structure that you use? How do you feel about this stuff? If you have any questions about it, or if you want more clarity on something that you're having trouble with in terms of saving your project, staying organized, let me know in the comments down below. I'd be more than happy to answer. And with that, we will leave you and love you, and we'll talk to you in the next video.